So today, the Minister of Minerals and Energy, Graeme Raubenheimer, said the country is keeping all of its energy supply options open. But this also includes nuclear. So tonight in Zoom In, we're looking at nuclear as an option for South Africa and whether or not it's time to decommission Koeberg. Raubenheimer, for one, has slammed the argument that nuclear power is expensive.
Body makes a statement that says nuclear energy is expensive. Again, it's an assumption rather than a fact. Koeberg generates the most cost-effective electricity in South Africa today. The character of nuclear is that it is expensive at commissioning, it is expensive at decommissioning. It is efficient in generating energy. And therefore, that is what we should be looking at, that we look into all these options that are at our disposal.
Well, South Africa is home to the only nuclear plant on the African continent, but Koeberg outside Cape Town is fast approaching retirement, and given the country's electricity crisis, there's a chance that Koeberg may produce electricity for several years to come. Now, the topic of nuclear has been making global headlines for all sorts of reasons recently. So our producer, Graeme Raubenheimer, paid Koeberg a visit.
One of the highest rated TV miniseries of the past decade is Chernobyl, a new dramatization of the 1986 nuclear disaster in Soviet Russia, which currently has the world talking about nuclear and its capacity for human error. Just 2 years before the Chernobyl disaster, Koeberg was born. Built using 1970s French technology, Africa's only nuclear plant, situated on Cape Town's beautiful west coast, has been producing electricity for the past 35 years. But while plans are now in the works to extend Koeberg's lifespan, some nuclear experts believe it's actually time for the plant to die naturally. Koeberg's responsible for powering about 6% of South Africa, and it's due to be decommissioned from the year 2024. But Eskom's busy refurbishing the plant so it can power the grid until 2045. Even though he's considered a renowned anti-nuclear activist, Mike Canty believes Koeberg is run by competent people, operating at high international standards. But Canty doesn't think it's a good idea to prolong Koeberg's life.
It would be a wise thing to bring Koeberg to its natural end, according to spec, and to clear the site of that operation and put all of the money that you save into renewable energy.
Eskom's revealed to Open News that a turbine tripped at Koeberg on the 2nd of May due to human error. This incident, though, is considered by many we've spoken to be fairly minor. Physics professor Hartmut Winkler says Koeberg is more modern than Chernobyl and Fukushima, but it is getting old.
In nuclear accidents, they use a scale called the INES scale, which goes from 0 up to 7. Now, Chernobyl and Fukushima were the only two incidents ever at 7. At Koeberg, the incidents they have is typically at say 1 or 2.
Extending Koeberg's lifespan will require a new license from the National Nuclear Regulator, and this could be opened for public comment in about 2 years' time. But for now, nuclear experts all agree that the chance of a repeat of Chernobyl happening in Cape Town is highly improbable, and that Koeberg's good maintenance and safety record remains very much in capable hands. Graeme Raubenheimer, Open News, Koeberg, outside Cape Town.
Well, we continue with that discussion. It's been a little more than 2 years since two small NGOs took on the government and won. It was in April 2017 that EarthLife Africa and SAFSE managed to stop government from proceeding with a 1 trillion rand nuclear deal with Russia. At the time, the Western Cape High Court declared the plans unconstitutional. The government opted not to appeal the ruling. According to the former Lungisa Vuzile, the former Director General of the National Treasury, that deal would have broken the country's budget. Vuzile made the comments to the state capture inquiry earlier this year. So where does this leave government's plans for nuclear, if any? So to help us answer this question, we're joined now in studio by the Deputy Director General of Nuclear and the Energy Department, Mr. Zizamele Mbombo. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. I want to start here. We heard the Minister Mantashe today talking about the contribution to the grid, right? And it's a 6%, seemingly a very small contribution to the grid. Why is it important that we even start having this discussion if the contribution is a mere 6%?
Thank you very much, Naledi, and the viewers at home. I think it's very important to start from a perspective of the policy direction that the government has taken. South Africa is a member of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and we operate our nuclear facilities following the international safety standard. And we are the only country in the region that's got an operational nuclear power plant, which is Koeberg. And we have been generating power through Koeberg nuclear power station for 35 years. And it's important to indicate to the listeners that the Koeberg nuclear power plant is licensed to operate for 40 years. And that is up to 2024. And from that time, then Koeberg is now in the plans to engage with the nuclear regulator to extend the life of the plant for another 20 years, which will take it up to 2045. But it will only continue to extend the life after it's been granted a license to extend the life by the National Nuclear Regulator. Now, Koeberg, by its very nature, plays a very significant part in supplying clean electricity to the grid. It also provides one of the cost-effective electricity within the ESCOM electricity systems of the power plants. And also, Koeberg has got a vast number of highly qualified nuclear experts that have been operating the plant for 35 years. It has operated safely for its entire 35 years. That shows the experience and the expertise that South Africa have in the area of operating the nuclear facilities. It's a much sizable contribution, 6% of electricity supplied to the grid by Koeberg. And it also assists in terms of balancing the grid. Because as you know, Naledi, that a lot of power stations are in the Midlands where you have to transport power down to the coast. So as one of the cost-effective measures was to build Koeberg along the coast so that it can stabilize the grid and then assist in that manner. And also, what is important also for the public to know is that, as I've indicated, that South Africa applies and complies with international safety standards. We've got systems in place that can assure that all the nuclear facilities in South Africa are operated safely. We've got the National Nuclear Regulator.
Right. Can I jump in there? And
yes.
The issue of safety is one that has been raised by environmentalists a lot as well, right? What we do with radioactive waste. And over the past 15 years, there have been reports of radioactive waste coming out of the Koeberg power station. How serious are some of those incidents?
We can assure the public that there has been minor incidences, and those incidences, they get investigated and they get reported to the National Nuclear Regulator, and they all have been found to be within the regulatory limits. So there is no risk to the public in terms of any radiation emissions that could be coming out of the Koeberg nuclear power plant. Okay. It's been operated safely. And I must add, we also have the Safari Research Reactor, which is in Pelindaba at Nexa. And that research reactor has been operated for more than 50 years safely. And we are the leader in the world. We're among the leading countries in the area of research and development, and also the production of nuclear medical isotopes, which are used for cancer treatments in the world. So we are not a newcomer in South Africa in terms of operating nuclear power plants. We've got more than 50 years experience, and we've created enough capability and the experience and the expertise within the country, and that is why we have been operating these facilities.
Well, the governance of Koeberg has been lauded for a very long time here in South Africa. But let's talk about now the costs associated with expanding the lifespan of Koeberg. What the time frames that we give ourselves in ensuring that by 2024 we are ready, in fact, for the next 20 years of running that power station. But the costs, and I raise the costs because the costs then bring up the question of why not invest that money into renewable energy?
I think we're touching on a very important point. As you know, a government policy is that government adopted an energy mix which looks into the various energy sources, and we need all of these energy sources, be it coal, be it clean coal, be it nuclear, be it the renewables, be it gas, be it hydro. And we are using all of the available energy technologies to provide an effective energy source to the public. So renewables is part of the energy mix, as well as nuclear, as well as coal and all other energy sources. So you then ask, why was it necessary to extend the life of the plant? And you're looking into the cost. And indeed, that's a matter that's already been taken a decision on in terms of extending the life of the plant, because all these plants, the Generation 2 plant, which is Koeberg, all over the world, they reach the end of the operational life and they then extend it. And so South Africa is not in a unique position to extend the life of this.
Do we have a clear number as to what that's going to cost us?
There is already a commercial process that was undertaken by Eskom in terms of getting the service providers that are going to do the work of the life extension, and that work is ongoing. And there is clear timelines by which the project will need to be completed.
I do wish you could share with us those timeframes and those numbers, but we've got more to discuss after the break. Do stay with us. You're watching Open News. Welcome back to Open News, and thanks for staying with us here on Zoom In tonight as we continue our discussion on nuclear power and the future of the Koeberg nuclear plant. Now, should anything major happen to Koeberg, the suburb of Danafontein near Melkbosstrand will be among the first areas to be evacuated. Yet, one of Danafontein's residents, Dee Airy, doesn't mind living next door to a nuclear plant. In fact, she was a Koeberg's librarian for 30 years.
I wouldn't live here if I had any concerns. No, it's been a pleasure to live here, and I will continue to live here. I feel perfectly safe with Koeberg. I worked right there, so I know the safety factors. Well, working in the library, it was very hard work because the engineers like everything yesterday. You have to work fast, but it was very, very interesting. My view is extend the lifespan of Koeberg. We haven't got enough power in South Africa. It's extremely expensive to send coal down from the north to the Western Cape. It's just impractical. Gas is extremely expensive. The gas power stations, extremely expensive to run, especially as they're open plan stations instead of closed plan. But no, we need Koeberg. So the extra years, what I find the people that are more anti are your developers, because they'll want to develop areas and build up this way when they can't. They're restricted.
Well, that's the view of a resident living near the Koeberg power station. And we continue our discussion here in studio with the Deputy Director General for Nuclear in the Energy Department, Mr. Zizamele Mbambo. Again, thank you for joining us. I want to start here. There's also a discussion that says that the topic of nuclear has become highly politicized in South Africa. Just last year, President Cyril Ramaphosa put a nuclear project on hold, a nuclear project that was initially spearheaded by former President Jacob Zuma. Can we admit also that the interest in nuclear in South Africa also depends very much on who is leading the project?
I think what is important is that we need to separate the technology from the politics.
Okay.
As far as the technology is concerned, nuclear is one of the most advanced technologies in terms of generating power. And in terms of the project, remember the government policy is that we will acquire the nuclear power plants at a price and the pace and the scale that the country can afford. So it is a policy of government that that's how we will acquire the additional capacity. And also, nuclear is guided by the government policy of 2008, the nuclear energy policy. So the work that's been happening was to deal with issues that were raised, but in terms of the government policy, it has never changed that we will acquire the nuclear power plants at the price, the scale, and the pace that the country can afford.
I ask the question, Mr. Mbambo, because for the general public that is watching, there is a change of narrative. Yes. Where last year we were told that the former president's nuclear project and the plans moving forward were expensive. This is what we heard from the president. We have today the Minister of Energy saying, who said that nuclear is expensive? So at what point did that narrative change? And what is it that then happened? And I'm asking for the sake of the public. At what point did nuclear become expensive and then inexpensive?
I think the Honorable Minister, Koeberg, clarified the issue of the cost, the affordability, when he answers the question during the tabling of the budget vote for the department. It's a relative term in terms of the cost. You have to appreciate the architecture or the nature of the cost of the associated with a nuclear power plant. Nuclear is relatively, when you compare with other baseload technologies, in terms of the capital cost, it's got a relatively higher capital cost, but it's got low operational cost. Why? Because of the fuel, it's got a cheaper fuel, it's got a cheaper maintenance cost. And also, one of the most important aspects of the nuclear power technology is that these plants are designed, they have a design life of ranging from 40 to 60 years, and you can extend it by another 20 years. So the general principle is that you pay off the capital cost within 20 years, right? And then you've got this asset that you can operate for another 60 years when you extend it like this, or you can extend it up to another 20 years. So if we look at the nature of the asset of a nuclear power plant, it's an asset that you pay off within 20 years, paying off the capital cost. It's got low operational cost, low maintenance cost, low fuel cost. And therefore, it becomes like a cash cow once you've paid off the capital cost.
Right, and so yet in this discussion, Mr. Mbambo, you have not given me clear numbers on what the expansion project would then cost us. But we're going to just move on. While government's controversial nuclear plans ebbs and flows, one nuclear expert believes that President Cyril Ramaphosa's administration should give up on the idea altogether. Physics professor Hartmut Winkler says Africa shouldn't pursue nuclear because it really is just too expensive. This is what he had to say.
Because I don't think there's a single country in Africa which can actually build this from their existing resources. They'd have to take on huge loans. And the history of building plants has not been a great one. It's been marked by cost overruns and delays. And even the so-called successful projects normally take at least 10 years to complete. So it's not a short-term solution. By the time those 10 years are up, the energy space in the world could have changed completely. Like 10 years ago, we didn't know that renewables were going to become as big as they have become.
Well, we've given ourselves up until 2024 to complete the refurbishment of the Koeberg power station. You have an energy expert there who says it's going to take us 10 years to really bring back the lifespan or extend the lifespan of Koeberg. You can respond to that, but I'm going to give you final thoughts as we move on, right? The certainty that we have that by 2024 we will be able to expand the lifespan of Koeberg. But more importantly, for the layman who's watching at home, the costs are going to be lower, but that it's going to be healthier, that we don't worry about radioactive waste.
I think we can assure the public that there is no need to worry about the radioactive waste. In South Africa, we've got systems in place for management of the radioactive waste. We've got a national repository site which is situated in the Northern Cape. It's called the Valput. That's where the low level and medium radioactive waste is safely stored. And when it comes to the issue of the high level radioactive waste or the spent fuel, in terms of the government policy, the fuel is kept in our facilities until there's a long-term solution in terms of the safekeeping of the spent fuel. Right. So there is no need to worry in terms of the management of the radioactive waste. We've got the systems in South Africa. We have used them for the past 36 years when the power plant has been in operation.
Right. So, and then you responded to the energy expert that we just heard who said the costs are going to be exorbitantly high because we need to then take loans, and of course the concern that it would take 10 years to expand Koeberg's lifespan.
I would differ with the expert in terms of his analysis of the cost. This life extension project is already funded by ESCOM. Work is ongoing, so that has already been accounted for in terms of how the life extension will be funded. And also in terms of the time it will take to do, because what mainly will be done will be the steam generator replacement. And there's a very short period within that is going to be done. It will not take 10 years to extend the life of Koeberg, the project of life extension. But once it's been extended, it will guarantee the security of supply to South Africans, because we will then have this asset that's going to operate, providing clean baseload electricity to South Africa to make sure that we've got a sustainable energy solution for the country. All
right. Well, let's leave it there. I really do appreciate you coming into our studio. The Deputy Director General there for Nuclear at the Energy Department, Mr. Zizamele Mbambo, joining us there, continuing the discussion on nuclear. Your thoughts to pursue nuclear or not at Open News SA. That's on Twitter and on Facebook. You can send your voice notes to us as well. 082 777 0735. We're back after the break.